Hey everyone, welcome to the Spawn on Me Wardcast Collab Couch. I'm Dylan Alvento.
Kahlief Adams here.
And we have an awesome group of guests today, starting from the far left. We have Anya from Kickstarter.
Hi.
And then Adriel Wallick of Train Jam fame.
Yeah, that's me.
And then Jarryd Huntley of, what was your studio name again? Polytundra. Hello. How you doing?
Good.
So, E3, we're in it.
We sure are.
Are we?
We are.
Are we actually? Are we here?
Well, I mean, that's what it says on the back.
Oh.
It's just a green screen. We're just putting whatever we want back there.
Yeah.
We're in the ocean. We're in the mountains. We're in Nebraska.
We're floating.
Those famous Nebraska
That's all going
mountains.
to be put in post.
So, what's everyone doing at the show? Jarryd, we'll start with you. What are you up to?
I am looking for more work to help developers bring their game to Nintendo Switch.
Oh, awesome.
Finished wrapping up a project helping port a game called Quench. So I'm looking to do more of that.
Okay.
Nice.
All right. So, like, you kind of know the landscape of going through their process of lot check and the like.
Yep.
And so you're trying to find studios interested in doing that.
Yep.
Cool.
Exactly.
What is that like?
There's just a lot of things that you don't think about, a lot of different considerations, but it's a lot of fun. And, having the finished product on, a console is just super rewarding, especially, like, I grew up with Nintendo consoles as a kid, so, like, 12-year-old me is just, like, exploding somewhere in the multiverse.
Sure.
Is that a thing that when folks are kind of going through the process of making their game, they're like, I want it here, and I definitely want it on Switch?
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Switch is, a lot of, companies are interested in bringing their games to Switch and kind of making that part of their plan.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Adriel,
Yes,
you're here.
I am.
Repping Train Jam.
Whoop whoop.
Repping.
Or choo choo.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should really get off the whoop whoop train and get on the choo choo train.
Can you chew whoop?
Choo
Choo whoop?
Choo whoop. Choo whoop. It doesn't feel good. I don't think I'm ever gonna do those noises again.
It's like a sneeze, but it's like an inhale?
Yeah, like that really bad kind of sneeze where it wasn't satisfying. It just sort of happened.
Oh,
yeah.
yes. Okay,
yeah,
word.
one of those.
Word.
It's all inhale, no exhale. Ugh. Ugh.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, Train Jam.
Train Jam. What does that look like at E3? What are you doing for that?
E3 is one of those weird events because I'm here mostly to have meetings about Train Jam, even though it has nothing to do with E3, but there's so many people that are here that I need to talk to about sponsorships for next year, sort of like keeping the ball rolling on people wanting to be involved with Train Jam, press, all that kind of stuff. It's less of a like schmoozing for games and development stuff or any of my contracts, and more for like keeping up the contacts with all of that and just making sure that people remember I exist and I rent a train every year.
Yeah, making sure the train,
Yeah.
a car doesn't shut off for some reason and it gets
that would
cold.
never
and
happen.
So one of the hosts on the show has to sleep on the cold car floor.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. We had one of our train cars this year lost power, and so it was very cold.
Did it sound like Shroop when it happened?
Probably. You were there. I wasn't there.
It sounded like, okay, I'm gonna go to bed, and then me waking up 2 hours later is like, I literally can't think. It's so cold.
Well, because the train goes through, the Rocky Mountains and the Sierra Nevada, like all these really cold places, and not only so because the power was out in the entire train car, the doors can't shut because then if they're shut, they can't open.
Right.
So you get all the outside air coming in, and it's very cold.
I think we're painting a bad picture of Train Jam.
Train Jam, aside from that one snafu this year, is generally incredible.
Yes.
And to be fair,
time.
even though that car had no power, because the doors were open, it smelled the best out of every single car.
Airing out. Yeah, that's true.
It was a very good smelling car.
Yeah, I remember I fell asleep. So we turned the back observation car into a makeshift cots for everyone.
Yeah, everybody got to sleep in the back observation car.
And I fell asleep on my back right next to one of the heat vents, and it was just so incredibly warm and great. And I remember falling asleep and then waking up, and the observation cars kind of have windows that curve around the entire side.
Sure.
I remember looking up at the Rocky Mountains, we were going through. It was
that's dope.
Here we are.
Yep.
That's cool.
It's a beautiful train ride. It starts in Chicago, it goes down to Denver, up through the Rockies, over Sierra Nevada, up through Donner Pass, and then down through Sacramento and everything. So it's just all the scenery you could ever want.
All the biomes.
All the biomes. Every biome America has to offer. We've got it.
It's true. Anya,
Hi.
Kickstarter.
Yeah.
How's it going?
It's still there.
Yeah? After all this time.
After all this time. After 10 years, we're still alive and kicking.
10 years?
It's 10 years. We
Really?
just celebrated
Wow.
our 10-year anniversary.
Nice.
Congrats. That's awesome.
We had a big birthday party. It was super fun.
So what are you doing at the show for it?
That's a good question. I am the only Kickstarter person here, so my job is very big and vast at E3. So I am one of the games outreach people. My job is to look for people who are interested in running games projects on Kickstarter. So I'm here to just kind of take a couple meetings, just kind of see what's going on. There's not a huge indie presence, which is okay, but typically what ends up happening is a lot of the big AAA games that come out, indies will tend to follow suit a little bit. So it's a lot of meetings, it's a lot of talking. I'm tired a lot. I need to replenish my Froyo as much as possible.
Oh, Froyo.
There's zero board game presence here, right? Because normally when you go to PAX,
no, actually, there's a couple board games here at the Indiecade booth.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So,
but other than that, this is exclusively video games.
All digital.
Yeah, all digital.
All digital all the time. How many like content? Like how many people? So like you're just running through like people that are interested in running Kickstarters, people that are like already in the process of running and just like checking in. Like, is there anything like how do meetings go beyond that? Like, are there other like industry people you have to talk to for X, Y, or Z reason?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I'll talk to publishers. Sometimes I'll work out small deals with publishers of like, here, you guys should talk to, or sorry, you folks. I'm trying to remove you guys from my vernacular because it's not very inclusive.
Yep, same.
Yeah, it's really challenging. And as a native Californian, even though I live in New York City, I'm saying y'all, and it feels a little weird. But I'm
with you. I'm a y'aller as well from New York.
Y'all is a good one.
Like y'all.
I embraced the y'all life a couple years ago, and
y'all's
like
safe.
y'all and
what are y'all doing?
folks is really good.
I use use.
Use.
I think I picked it up from my grandma, but
just never say yins.
No, can't do that.
Yeah.
Nope.
Shout out to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
I'm from Central Pennsylvania. We've got usins and yins and uses.
I don't like it.
It's a whole thing.
It's unreasonable.
It's bad.
So talking to publishers, talking to conference organizers too. Like I like talking to conference organizers just to see kind of how Kickstarter can possibly be involved. We don't really like doing things like sponsorships because it doesn't really make a lot of sense for us necessarily.
Except for Train Jam.
But our deal with Train Jam was we're going to give you X amount of money provided that you can bring maybe like a marginalized creator who otherwise would not be able to attend.
Oh, dope.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So that's kind of, so like if we're going to give money to somebody, to any organization or conference organizer or anything like that, we need to know it's going towards something rather than just like, balancing budgets and things like that, which is fine, and you need to do that, but it's really important for us as a company, as Kickstarter, our big mission is to really kind of like be as in tune with it as possible.
Right.
I'm curious about how the kind of landscape looks at this point when it comes to crowdfunding, or at least getting that kind of money from your community on your platform. I know everyone has kind of been talking about shouting out their SoundCloud everywhere they go and putting up stuff on their Patreon and things like that. But it feels like Kickstarter in that same space is what, kind of ushered a lot of this in. How is the ecosystem kind of looking towards games now in that way, and does it feel like it's having to change any of the stuff that it has to do to kind of stay in that relevant space?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, the thing to keep in mind is Kickstarter is 10 years old.
Yeah.
So as we as humans age,
sure,
Kickstarter as a platform is going to age a little bit more. So there's a little bit more maturity involved. There's a little bit more nuance involved.
Sure.
So the days of just putting like, a very simplistic GDD, a game design document of maybe like a paragraph up there, those days are gone. You need to have something that's like a little bit more beefy.
Yeah.
And there needs to be a little bit more content associated with it. You need to be probably 50 to 70% of the way done.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, so you definitely need to kind of come prepared.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's actually a good thing because it means that you've done the work ahead of time. So it means that you're very serious about what you're doing. So the content that you're putting out, that you're saying, hey, I need the last 50 to 30 to 50% of my funding because I'm really serious about this, is like, it's good. It's good for the community. But also, like, I mean, yes, the days of these like $1 million to $2 million projects are rare these days.
Sure.
But the thing that I don't think gets discussed enough, that I always get a little frustrated with, is there's so many amazing indie games that have come to Kickstarter that have launched, right? Like Wonder Song, for example. Greg Loganoff was a Kickstarter project. That Dragon Cancer was a Kickstarter project. Hyper Light Drifter was a Kickstarter project. Super Hot wouldn't be where it is today without Kickstarter. Super Hot VR, which is just like taken over, things like that. And then even games that have funded recently, I'm gonna mispronounce this, and I'm going to be very upset with myself. I think it's pronounced Tunche, Tunche. It just recently funded, and it's doing extremely well. Knights and Bikes was a Kickstarter project that everybody's familiar with. Like, I could sit here and like rattle them off, but we, as Kickstarter, like, we don't necessarily require or need sort of that like recognition of like, well, you wouldn't be here without us. Like, that's not true.
Right.
But it also means that we don't get the recognition.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like it's this integral part of how that thing gets made.
Yeah.
But it's also just like, you know, you guys are the y'alls. Y'alls, are helping out in such a fundamental way that it's like that part of the story doesn't really get written into the credits, right? It's like hardly ever done that way.
It hardly ever is, yeah.
Yeah. Adriel, I'm curious about Train Jam now being in what year at this point?
We just did our 6th Train Jam,
Sixth
so
one.
I'm just now planning the 7th Train Jam.
Yeah. And I mean, it's universally loved from everyone who I've ever heard who has been on one.
Yay!
Raise your hand if you've been on a Train Jam.
Next year, I'll do it next year.
Awesome.
Next year.
I
And you too.
I have to learn how to make a game.
I'm gonna be an advisor, I think.
Yeah, so we actually started a couple years ago a mentorship program on the train, and it's sort of hand in hand with, we've been running a student ambassador program where we work with universities and get students of a whole bunch of different sort of areas to come on the train. And then just through that of having the students and having so many, more established professionals on the train, we started a mentorship program.
Oh, nice.
Where pretty much all day and all night throughout the train ride, people will be available in the mentorship area to just talk about anything from like specific, how to program a thing or how to math a thing or how to art and thing to how to game develop.
Sure.
So like we had the Saltzmans on there talking about how to have publisher relationships. We had Valve representatives there of how to publish on Steam, and it's just like anybody who wants to talk about anything of any experience in the games industry can come on that and be a mentor and just sort of like be there and be available as a resource for people.
Did that come about from feedback from folks who had been before, or was that something that
it was one of those very organic things where, so the very, 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 very first year of Train Jam back in 2014, there was like these 4 random students from some university in Chicago that signed up for Train Jam, and I ended up talking to them at some point during the jam towards the end, and they were like, we just thought this was like some rinky-dink thing, like, and we signed up because we saw tickets, and here we are with like this developer and that developer and this big person, and oh my gosh, and it's just been incredible, and I worked with this person. And then I was relaying that story to a friend of mine, John Lindvay, who was just like, we can embrace that, and we can make this a whole student ambassador thing because we have a lot of bigger name people coming on, and this was so invaluable for these students. Let's make that a real thing.
Sure.
And so that just sort of organically, he took over that and he started planning it with me and doing the whole student ambassador program. And then a couple years of that, I think it was the Saltzmans who sort of like mentioned it like offhandedly of like, oh, we could like, I sat one night in a train car and just talked to some students, and they really liked that, and it was really helpful for them. Why don't we turn that into a thing? And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Let's head it up. And so now the Saltzmans head that up for me every year. And we have this whole like thing where they get these big trucker caps, and they're like bright yellow, and anybody who wants to be a mentor can take a trucker cap, and they can write their, what their specialty is or whatever. And so even if they're not in the like assigned mentorship hours, they can still be wearing the hat, and people know they can approach them. And then if you don't want to be approached, you take the hat off.
That's dope.
And it's just this really nice resource of seeing these people who have all this knowledge to spread to all these people on the entire train. At just at any moment you can talk to them, because we're all like on top of each other. We're all intermingling all the time, and then we have such extensive diversity initiatives that we have such a wide array of people coming from all over the world, people who are coming from countries where they can't normally meet a Valve representative or something. Now they're trapped on a train with them, and they can just be like, oh, your hat says Valve, I'm going to talk to you, here's my contact. It's just been this like really cool organic thing that's happened. So
that's fantastic.
You could be that person, you could be a mentor.
Hey,
be there and just talk about how to exist in games, basically.
Oh man, there's a conversation there to be had for sure. That's absolutely true. That's super true.
You should all of you next year.
Word.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Train Jam 2020.
Oh,
it's going to be the most futuristic Train Jam.
Jarryd, I want to talk about Train Jam as well, but kind of like from the perspective of like us having participated in it as attendees. How many times have you done it?
Just once.
Just the once, and that was not 2018 but 2017,
yes.
Right? So what'd you think?
I loved it. I've done a number of different game jams. In Cleveland, we do game jams. I've done game jams in Toronto. And doing a game jam is just, meeting all these people, but then having the added benefit of, seeing these like beautiful, scenic, just landscapes, and with everybody being on a train, everybody's there. With the in-person game jam, some people might go out to lunch or whatnot, and so I feel like the collaboration on Train Jam was just kind of like a next level. And there was also not having the internet forces you to talk with people because
Yes.
I have signal almost the entire ride, just saying.
You're one of the few people who has ever had signal on Train Jam consistently.
Yeah.
It's like I've seen teams change their entire design of their game because their programmer can't remember how to do a thing and nobody can get connected to anything to look it up, and so they're just like, well, let's make a completely different game then.
Right.
And it's the funniest stuff, and I love it because it pushes people to like be out of their comfort zone and try something new.
Yeah.
And like the scenery, like you were saying, and it feels so cliche to say it, but it's so inspiring. It's like it makes you feel creative and just like inspired to do things because you're just looking at all these beautiful things going by and you're like, wow, the world is big.
It's also the most productive game jam because you can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
So
No,
okay,
you are.
I'm kind of burnt out today. I'm gonna go home. I'm gonna chillax.
And that's why I very like intently will walk up and down the train like late at night and be like, hey, go to bed.
Yeah.
Like I know it's easy to lose track of time, but everybody go to bed. Like don't stay up all night. I know you're stuck here and you just want to work.
Remember, GDC is right after this.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's why normally Train Jam is supposed to get in the Saturday before GDC, so everybody gets Sunday to relax, and then Monday GDC starts. Unless it's this year, which again, Train Jam's great. It's wonderful. Not a lot of things go wrong normally, but we were 20 hours late this year, so we rolled in Sunday afternoon. I took the longest nap of my life, ate a dinner, went to bed, and then had a meeting at 10 a.m. the next morning.
Oh my God.
I went to bed. So normally how it works is that like by the end of the first day you go to bed and you're like outside of Omaha and you wake up and we're in Denver. The first day this year I went to bed outside of Omaha. I woke up outside of Omaha because we had a huge delay.
Yeah, it was basically there was historic flooding in all of Nebraska, so we got rerouted. I don't know if you know this, but we were coming into Omaha, and then we had to sit there for about 8 hours so that they could clear out the track so we could back up, go onto a different track, and then back into Omaha because we had to go to Omaha for crew changes.
Yeah.
So it was just a whole thing.
Right.
Two of the 3 mornings of Train Jam this year, I woke up when we were going backwards.
Yeah, me too.
And I was like, great, perfect.
Yeah, I was like, what
I
are we
love
doing?
it.
But it was cool because it inverted the timetables for everything.
Yeah.
So we saw like the
The
Great
salt
Flats.
yeah.
And that was
Yeah,
cool.
we saw a whole bunch of different scenery, so it was really cool. I felt bad for the people who didn't get a good look at the Rockies this year because it was nighttime.
But they should just come back
the
next
salt
year.
flats were incredible.
Right. So, as both indie reps, what do you make of E3? Like from that perspective, like obviously there's indie representation stuff there, even on the big press conferences like Xbox and so on. But like, what is your feeling here as an indie? Because like this is my first E3, so it's like I kind of was still trying to get a read on everything. What about you guys?
What about you? What?
What about
folks.
y'all?
Okay.
There we go. I like this.
You need that. Check us.
Checking each
Absolutely.
other.
Yeah.
At
Yes,
least
Jarryd, go first.
I'll go first. I'll take it. At least for me, it's really encouraging. I mean, a couple of years ago, you'd watch the press conferences, and you wouldn't see any indie games. It was just all AAA.
Yeah.
But slowly, over the years, there's been more indies, more of the big companies embracing indies, supporting indies, and it's encouraging to see, games, friends of mine have worked on, get representation on their studios supporting different games, things outside the norm. So it's been interesting to see that slow shift.
What do you think, Adriel?
Yeah, I've sort of noticed a similar thing, and then it's funny because I feel like we're coming, like there's like, there's an ebb and flow to everything, and so, at first there was no indie representation. It was just AAA, big, whoa, and then all of a sudden we started like having that ramp up, and then, maybe 3 or 4 years ago is when it was like really peak, like here's a whole section of indies, here's some indies on stage, like here's, again, friends of mine, being like on the Xbox presser, like the Sony presser stage, and I'm like, oh, my little heart. And then like maybe last year, or the year before, it started being like, oh, here's an indie montage,
Right.
And here's a longer indie montage and a little shorter indie montage, and so it's like it's weird because we've hit that. I feel like the ebb of that where we're like, okay, we acknowledge indie exists, we're still very much supporting it, but it's not, we don't have to make a big to-do about it anymore because now it's just normal to support indies, and it's just like, here's our indie montage, here's maybe 1 or 2 people from the indie scene talking about whatever they're doing, but it's not like this, whoa, like, look at us, we support indies and we're cool. It's more of a, of course we do, this is what we do now.
But also, like, you saw things with like, the Finji back game, Tunic, like, they had their indie reel last year on the Microsoft booth, and then they specifically showcased Tunic.
Yeah.
I remember
that was so cool.
I messaged Dicey like, so you like got like a specific shout out from Phil Spencer in your own reel, and he was like, yeah. That was weird, and also they didn't tell him.
Oh, that's so good.
Could you imagine just like surprise? Everybody knows you now.
Yeah.
That's cool. What about you, Anya?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing to keep in mind is like E3 exists for press essentially, right?
Yep.
Like that's what this conference is about, and I think that I don't know. Maybe I have a little bit of a controversial opinion here.
Go for it. Our house is your house.
Oh no!
We're all looking at you now.
So I think the thing with E3 is that I think it is unique in the sense that GDC is very indie friendly. PAX is very indie friendly.
Yeah.
They aren't super AAA friendly, and I think E3 is kind of the only conference I can really think of, at least a major conference that's very.
So it's just
You're
laughing like safe harbor for AAA. Like
I know, and
being
think about
bullied
people like
everywhere else.
I'm not like a AAA sympathizer by any mean, but I do think that it's
Good.
I want that to be a term so bad.
Just like have a T-shirt that says AAA.
Yeah.
What about them? And
this
this says big 3 A's on the back of the shirt.
Yeah.
It's like, what about them?
the AAAs are just the white man of.
Perfect. Well, what about AAA pride?
I know. I'm sorry. But I do think, oh God, I swear I'm not like an incel or like a red pill sympathizer or anything like that. I promise, 100% I'm not. Oh, I'm just like a little.
Your opinion wasn't controversial till we started going down this route, and now we're all just it's a.
We're staring into the void.
So are we supposed to like milkshake AAA? Just throw milkshakes
No more
at them?
ducks.
No more ducks.
Sorry,
just
what have I
milkshakes
done?
for
I'm
AAA.
so sorry. Ah!
Oh,
Oh God,
That's
no!
so
But
good.
I think it's important. I think it's totally fine to have a conference that's like very AAA centric, because I also think it actually makes the indies a little bit more special.
Yeah.
In a way, like the heart and soul of this conference really is the indies. It's not the AAA. The AAA is like what brings in the money, and everybody's like, oh, it's great and it's fun, and you can have these like statues everywhere and these just like really absurd booths that are just like way too big for their own good. But like the games that people really talk about, at least within us and our community, are the indies that come out of that, right? Like I go to Xbox and I'm gonna be like, oh my gosh, StarCrossed was there. That's so cool. Tunic was there. Like those are the games that resonate with me a hell of a lot more than a lot of these AAA games.
One of the God.
Oh, and I guess one thing to kind of bounce off of that's interesting that I've seen more happen recently is just the shift between indie and AAA, where a lot of my indie friends have worked indie, built up their companies, and then worked for AAA, or AAA friends will go indie, and so there's more of a kind of exchange going on between the two sides, the duality.
Yeah, I mean, I think those lines are being pretty blurred, right? Like, I think even just the word indie, it's just a term. It doesn't mean anything.
Well, it's one of those things that always sort of annoys me when you go to a game store where it's like genres, where it's like action, adventure, puzzle, indie.
Right.
And it's like, but that encompasses so much
Sure.
now. And like, what does indie mean? Like now Bungie is indie.
Right.
They don't have a publisher. Is Bungie indie? Technically, yes, by definition.
So
and
it was
there's
Double Fine, but were they really?
Yeah, and so it's
Right.
just this weird thing where it's like there is no real clear delineation of what that means anymore. Is indie like somebody in their basement working on something really artsy and cool that's never going to sell $1, whatever, or is indie somebody with 50 people working with them making this really beautiful Unreal Engine game, self-funded somehow.
It still feels like there's this really interesting difference in the way that consumers think about it and the way that we all think about indie.
Yeah.
It's like, because there's this like still connotation that's like indie is kind of, you're broke. Like you don't have enough money to do the things you need to do. These other people have enough money to do what they need to do. But in our circles, it is that, right?
Yeah.
It's like we know that runs a huge gamut of so many different kinds of things.
Right.
But shouldn't it just be, sorry.
No, totally go ahead.
I mean, I just feel like the labels that we put on things, like at the end of the day, a good game is a good game.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Right.
matter where it comes from. And I think sometimes that's where I get a little bit frustrated with the video games industry is it's like, a good game is a good game. It doesn't matter where it comes from.
Right.
And yet there's this weird thing where it's like, oh, but it was that studio.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't like that. And I'm
Right.
like, but does it really matter? Like, so I don't know.
Yeah.
That kind of drives me a little bit.
I mean, it's a hard thing, right? We there's always that interesting perspective from the folks who are not in the industry.
Yeah.
Right.
Where they're still trying to figure out like how to name things for themselves and how they want to, how they come to it is like.
And it's natural for like people to cling to terms to try and figure out what box to put it in for a thing that they're unfamiliar with. It's
That's
like,
true.
I don't understand indie games. Let me just cling to these terms that I've heard of before and I understand to some extent. And that's sort of where that happens from the outside perspective. For us, we're so in it. We're like, oh, indie is this and not this, and definitely this, but not this. Whereas outside, it's like, oh, indie, I get it. Small, little, tiny game.
Right.
It'll definitely be like debated for the end of time.
Oh yeah. There's like 5 conversations that the games industry has every single year,
What
and
are
this
they?
is
Our
one of
games
them.
art?
What is indie? Our games art.
Don't get me started on the our games art. I will rant.
Do games cause violence?
Right.
What's the other one?
Loot boxes.
Loot boxes.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, so we just cycle through them every year, and the conversations get more and more refined, and someday we will just be old and not care anymore.
Yeah, and then it'll be a battle royale to the death of which topic wins out.
We all lose.
Yeah, nobody wins that game.
You should just have a wheel, like a topic wheel, and just spin it, and that's what you have to talk
Next,
about.
next E3. That's what
Here
we're
we
gonna
go.
do.
That's actually
Next
pretty
E3,
good.
that was really good.
This is only marginally related, but there's a restaurant I like in Seattle, and they have a wheel that you get to spin every hour during happy hour, and it chooses what drink is the happy hour special for that half, like for every half hour they do it for like 4 or 5 hours,
That's
and it's
dope.
really fun to just be like, and then everybody like stops and watches.
Yeah.
Oh,
Is
that's
there anything
awesome.
like ridiculously expensive on there? It's like
I don't know. I don't drink, so I don't actually know any of the things that are up there. But it's really fun to watch everybody get really excited about this wheel every half hour. And it's a really good restaurant, and the pasta is really good.
Oh.
Yeah.
all right.
What's the name of it?
Yeah, rep.
It's okay.
There's like some numbers and stuff. I don't know.
We'll find out, Wes.
Yeah.
Shawoop.
Jarryd, let's talk about indie scenes. Let's talk about game dev scenes. Like you said, you're in Cleveland. You're in the Cleveland area. What's the scene like over there?
So it's a really small scene as far as, what people would consider like, indies, but, indies that have their games on Steam and things like that. But it's been really growing recently.
Yeah.
We have a group called the Cleveland Game Developers. I happen to be wearing the shirt right now.
Nice.
And
Nice
it's our local.
representation.
Thank you. It's our local group, so we do meetups, we do game jams, we do workshops, and it's really just about teaching anyone from kids, adults, seniors, just anyone who's interested in making games. And
Sure.
So the group's been around for 15 years. I've been a member for about 10 and organizer for about 5.
So what's that like? Like, I mean, I participate in like the game dev scene, help out in Richmond, Virginia. But like, what is there like? Is there a local flavor to like what the Cleveland scene is like? Is there like people that gravitate towards specific projects?
I guess one of the things that a lot of people are involved in are game jams. So last year we had, I think, 87 people at our global game jam site, which was just amazing to see that many people.
Yeah.
We've had people drive into our game jams from Pittsburgh, from Southern Ohio, and so a lot of those game jam games that people who maybe haven't made games or haven't felt comfortable will really get encouraged and then kind of take their projects from there.
Cool.
The other thing that's kind of a recurring theme is somebody will move to Cleveland and assume, oh, there's no game industry or people working on games, and they'll find the group and they'll be super stoked to find other people who are working on games. And so we get a lot of talent from people moving back to Cleveland or recent graduates, and the scene's really been growing. So recently there is a game Bomb Fest that released on all consoles, Sentinels of the Multiverses, a really big game that was designed in Cleveland, the mobile version. And so there's a lot of really exciting projects, and the group's really picking up steam and just kind of growing.
Cool.
There's also a huge board game community in the Midwest.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's Origins is happening this weekend. I think it's in Ohio. I don't know if
I think it's in Columbus.
Is it in Columbus?
Yeah.
So there's Columbus. There's a Origins in Columbus, and then the biggest one is Gen Con in Indianapolis.
Yep.
But there's a huge board game community in the Midwest. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, we actually have a cousin group in Cleveland called the Ultimate Team Up, and they're a board gazette.
Gazame.
Yeah, it's
Board gazames.
It's a new type of game.
board game design group in Cleveland, and they work on board games. They've had a number of projects that have been produced, a couple on Kickstarter.
Yep.
So it's really cool to watch those, and they participate in the game jams as well.
Cool.
We see that the indie space is really, really vast. Lots of different kinds of games in the space right now. Is there something that you feel is not being hit yet? Or a topic or a kind of game that you haven't seen yet that you're like, I want this to be the thing that I see next?
So I know this is something I think a lot of people can relate to, but I'm really bored of shooting things.
Yep.
Yes.
Like there was a, and I know Harmonix isn't indie. Well, they kind of are because they have no publisher. But anyway, there was a Harmonix game announced a couple months ago where it was a VR game where it was like music, but you shoot it.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, come on, like, is there? Can we? Like, I love my shooting games. I play a lot of Destiny. I've played a lot of Apex. I love hyper violent things. Like, I'm
Sure.
not like against the shooting and the violence, but I'm so bored of it as a thing. And
I had that this year too during the press conferences.
Yeah, and it's just like it's so much, and I think indie games do a really good job of exploring that more than AAA does.
Yeah.
But I feel like we've only just briefly scratched the surface, and even like to go one step further, just non-violent games at all.
Right.
Sure.
Like something like Ooblets and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like I want to explore that space more.
The Gardens
That's not-
Between.
Yeah. Oh, the Gardens Between look good. There's what was that game that was on the Xbox briefing that looked amazing?
12 minutes.
Spiritfarer.
We literally just talked about
Yeah,
it.
we just talked about
I think
it.
it's called Spiritfarer, but it's
Yeah.
just like these like beautiful games that don't focus on violence that still tell a story
Sure.
and are still entertaining and this, that, and the other thing. Like I feel like we're only just sort of there. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm sick of shooting things.
Same.
I've got
Fair.
enough shooty games.
Yeah.
I got them.
Yeah. Jarryd, what are your thoughts on that?
Just different kinds of relationships. I
Yeah.
just finished a game called A Plague Tale: Innocence.
Yeah.
It's set in 14th century France.
Yeah.
And you're this young woman who's like 16 and protecting your 5-year-old brother and trying to survive the plague. Your parents have been taken by the Inquisition, and just seeing that relationship between an older sister and a brother, and she's trying to figure out how to navigate the world and explain things to her younger brother was just something you don't really see in games. And mother-daughter relationships, relationships between partners, just different types of relationships. I would just love to see more of that in games and more representation there.
Yeah. Anya?
I know there is a technical term for this, but I can't remember what it is.
Sure.
So I'm going to call it normcore. But games like Gone Home,
Yeah.
where it's sort of a puzzle game, but it's really just a story being told, and it's very deep and complex just through very simplistic gameplay. I played Gone Home recently, or I guess last year, and just was like, oh, this is incredible.
Was that your first time playing it?
It was my
last
first
year?
time playing it. I know. I'm kind of late to the game.
That's super good.
No pun intended, late to the game.
You're late to the gizane.
Let me just moonwalk out of here in embarrassment, excuse me. There's something about it that really captured it to me. I think also because I'm a child of the 90s,
Yeah.
and all of the feminist music that was coming out of that game, and I was like, oh, this was me. This really represented me when I was that age. So there's something really cool about that. There's actually a game here at the Indiecade booth. I don't remember the name of it, but it basically is an homage to the early 2000s internet, and it simulates what that internet would look like.
Ooh.
Yeah, so it's GeoCities pages and MySpace and stuff like that. And so I love this sort of exploration of childhood through games in a way that's a little bit different, rather than just you're a child and you have a ball and you bounce it.
Yeah.
How many songs did I try to download in the 2000s?
Oh, I know.
Clogging up my house internet, my house phone.
How much money do I owe Metallica?
Oh, no doubt, right?
I have this very vivid memory of right when the very first Harry Potter movie was coming out to theaters, and I was having a sleepover with a friend of mine who was also obsessed with Harry Potter.
Yeah.
And so we got onto my dial-up internet, and we found an illegal version of Harry Potter from the movie theater that we could download. We let it download all night, and it was we had a half a second clip, and I was like, wow, this is amazing.
What's your house?
I've never taken the sorting quiz, but
Oh,
I don't know.
geez.
I imagine I'd probably be somewhere in Ravenclaw if
Yeah.
I had to self-diagnose what house I'm in.
Yeah. What? Now I'm curious.
Houses.
You all.
I've
What's your
not-
house?
Houses.
I've not watched a Harry Potter movie.
Yeah.
Not yet.
I've seen 1 3/4 Harry Potter
Okay.
movie.
I'm a Gryffindor.
Yeah, that checks out.
Yeah. I'm a Slytherin.
That also checks out.
What are the main traits for the houses?
Slytherin's bad.
No,
That's not bad.
Slytherin's
Slytherins are cunning and sort of mischievous in a way, very, very just sort of
Yeah.
Evil.
Whereas Gryffindors are meant to be like brave and powerful and stand up for people. Ravenclaws are like the studious sort of the thinking about riddles and stuff. Hufflepuff is like everything else.
Yeah. Hufflepuff is miscellaneous.
If you're not one of those three,
It's
you're
like
a
D.
Hufflepuff.
It's like D, all the above.
Yeah.
Or none of the above.
Yeah.
Catch-all.
That's funny.
Also, this is a total aside, but I remember the name of that restaurant now.
What was it?
It was Vaughn's 1000, Vaughn's 1000 like spirits or something, or Vaughn's
Interesting.
1000.
Vaughn's 1000 Gazames.
Yeah, anyway, they have like sourdough pasta. It's dope.
What?
Wow.
Stop. Whoa.
And
have
the
to check
spinny
that out.
wheel.
And the spinning wheel.
Yeah.
Oh, damn,
Okay,
that's
we can
cool.
go back to talking about Gryffindors.
Is the sourdough pasta on the spinning wheel?
No, it's only
Could you
drinks.
imagine that? Oh my god.
That'd be. I would. Oh man, that'd be so good.
Quick question about E3. So the conversations.
You don't want to talk about
The
pasta
what?
in Seattle?
I would much
Where
rather
are
talk
we?
about pasta in Seattle than talk about video games. If that's the case. So now I just got real hungry, so I'm trying
Yeah.
to divert
Yeah.
so I don't
Gotta
stay
take some
hungry.
off it.
So I don't stay hungry. Oh, I can talk about pasta all day. Oh, what?
Favorite
I
pasta?
made zucchini pasta.
One of my other favorite pastas is also from Seattle. There's a place that has a really good truffle gnocchi.
Oh, see, no, we can't hang because that's bad business.
It's
Because
so
I want all
good.
that. I want all of
Come
it.
to Seattle with me. Let's just go to Seattle.
We'll just go get pasta.
If only there was a conference that was happening over
Yeah.
Memorial Day weekend or
Well,
Labor Day.
There's
I
a
guess.
reason
Yeah, right.
to go to Seattle.
Oh yeah. That's
To be
right.
continued.
That's gonna be a thing. Totally lost my question.
Pasta.
No, it wasn't pasta. It was not pasta, Adriel. So E3,
Pizza.
The conversation.
Just kidding.
There's no good pizza.
Froyo.
Yo,
Yeah.
on Froyo.
We all got Froyo before coming
did.
here.
Yeah.
No, I didn't. Well,
That's why we're so
we were
energetic.
busy. We were trying to figure it out. I want all these things. The conversation around E3 has been about how it's shrinking and how
Yeah.
everyone's kind of moving off the show.
E3's indie now. I don't know if you heard.
Oh. Indy 3.
No, I remember that.
So
That was a good
NIMBY.
thing. I thought that thing was dope when they did it. Anyway, what are your thoughts about? What are your thoughts about the show kind of shrinking and changing from what we knew it was before? It just threw me all off.
So I think the thing to keep in mind is that this is not E3 is not the only show experiencing
True.
this. GDC has been experiencing this. PAX has experienced this. Maybe not to the degree that E3 has. And I think it's more a reflection on the industry rather than E3 as a conference.
Okay.
And I think it's a question of like, there's so much money that gets thrown into these things to sort of what return? Like, what are you actually getting back in return for having these giant statues and these, a climbing wall, which is great. And like, if you have the money and it's not a problem, that's fine. But what are you actually doing? What's sort of the intent here?
Yep.
And so I think it's actually a good thing because I think that people are being a little bit more mindful on like, maybe we don't need to do these big events and we need to like, we can actually manage our community a little bit more on a site that's off-site.
Right.
And really kind of like the people that are truly our fans that aren't just here to kind of like maybe break our computers, steal our stuff, and just ask for free things, they're going to be much more excited and they're going to be much more willing, like engaged community members and customers essentially in the long run.
Yeah.
I'm curious if Sony's what they're gonna do.
I mean, I'm sure they
next
have
years.
a huge plan because they have lots of stuff coming and they have things that are going to be
It
displayed.
might even
and
be
shown.
like focusing more on their PSX event and
Right.
just making that into a big thing.
Yeah.
And I wonder
Yeah.
how much of this is like gamers seem to want content updates all the time now.
Right.
Like constant content updates. And so we're no longer in this sort of era where once a year we can have this whole big to-do and everybody will be satisfied. Because
Yeah.
like there's barely a thing that I feel like came out of any of these press conferences that was like new, exciting, whoa.
Sure.
Like everything was announced a couple months ago. There's always this sort of constant drip into the media of like, here's what's coming out, here's what we're working on, here's where the trends are, and it just sort of like is constant throughout the year, and
Yeah.
there's no longer a need for something like E3 where it is just like, boom, here's all the things, okay, we're over, we'll see you next year. It's everybody's too impatient for E3 now.
Yeah. That's a good point.
And I think, Nintendo, is a good example. I mean, they pulled out of E3 3-4 years ago, and everybody was kind of a little bit, surprised by that. But they've kind of mastered the direct thing, like what you said, Adriel, where, there's 6-8, Nintendo Directs every couple, months. They have 6 or 8 throughout a year. And it's just this, little stream of announcements rather than a giant announcement once a year.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised to see, more companies kind of, follow suit.
Yeah, I agree. Anything else yet? Kahlief? Anything on your
Pasta.
pasta? Just pasta.
Pasta.
I want pasta.
Let's all go to Seattle and get some pasta. They don't have pasta in Los Angeles.
No, and they don't
Only
have, they don't have
burritos.
pizza here either.
Yeah.
They don't have a spinny
boy.
wheel.
And they don't have the spinny wheel. We need this. We need to go to Seattle.
All right, everybody, we're
PAX
gonna go.
West. We're
PAX
all
West.
getting back
For
together,
Seattle.
and we're going to Vaughn's 1000, getting some pasta, spinning the wheel.
Let's do it.
So
Playing some
excited.
Giz-
So down
It
for
has
that.
been decrizzy.
I ate there 3 times last PAX West,
Did you really?
Wow.
Impressive.
All right.
and we're all good.
Are they gonna have like a booth just for you now? This
Maybe.
Wednesday?
I did eat at the
Have a
same
placket?
booth 2 of those nights, so it's mine now.
Oh my
Well, I think
gosh.
that's a good place to wrap it up. What say you, Kahlief?
Spin it around the fork, as we say.
Let's put some
Yes,
sauce
yes.
on it and call it a
There
night.
we go.
Yes.
You're welcome for the free advertising, Vaughn's 1000 in
Yeah,
Seattle.
what up with that,
Please give me
Vaughn's?
free pasta.
Sponsorship.
Yeah, seriously.
Let's go down the line, see where people could find you. Anya, where can people find you?
Hi, you can find me on the internet. My Twitter is ANYAYNA. That's more games related stuff. And then my Instagram is at Anya Combs Her Hair. That's more music stuff.
Sure. Yes, saxophonist.
I play the saxophone. I have a
Yes.
saxophone tattoo.
Oh, that's dope.
Yeah, there we go. I see it now.
That's
Nice.
super dope.
Adriel.
I'm also on the internet. I'm most places as Miss Minotaur. That's MSMINOTAUR. I got real good at spelling Minotaur over the years.
That's very good.
Yeah, Twitter, I barely am on anymore. Instagram, I post a lot of pictures of other people's animals. And then Train Jam. This is an important one because that actually has an internet presence.
Yes.
On Twitter, it's at Indie Train Jam, and then you can also find any information about Train Jam 2020 at trainjam.com. But mostly we do a lot of the information output on Twitter, so that's at Indie Train Jam.
Awesome. Jarryd.
I am at Jarryd Huntley, and Jarryd is spelled Jarryd, and Huntley Huntley. And then the Cleveland game developers at Cle Game Devs, and that's where you can hear about a lot of the games coming out of Cleveland.
Awesome.
Dylan,
Kahlief.
this is the end of our video content.
Video
Of
content.
our video thingies that we have been doing for the past 2 or 3
Video
days.
thingies.
Video thingies. I mean,
It's
almost.
been a long day. Okay.
Yeah, I can't think. My brain doesn't work. Gizames is now a thing.
you
in
need
my
some
head.
You
pasta.
need pasta.
Yeah.
Yo, carbs.
Pasta time.
Mad carbs, son.
Carb down.
But I want to thank everybody who's come through, all of our guests who have been a part of all of our coverage for E3 this year. I have to give a huge shout out to you, Dylan, for being my co-host, being my co-captain on this whole wonderful thing. My man Shola behind the cam, my man Evan behind the cam, doing all that wonderful stuff, helping this all out, making it fantastic. Shout out to the E3s and all the ESAs and all those folks for putting us in a wonderful booth that you can see behind us right here. And definitely to all of you at home in Chicago and Wardcast land for checking out all the content that we have for you at E3 for this year. We hope to do this again next year. It would be really, really cool.
Absolutely.
Hopefully I won't sweat and it will be amazing.
No promises.
Because my body can't take it. I have no water left in my soul. So thank you all so much for coming and hanging out with us. Make sure you're checking out all the content on our podcast platforms, and we'll see you soon.
And thank you guys.
Thank you.